Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Alan Barry Labucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. Yesterday, I did my weekend show, and because it ran an hour and a half, I wasn't able to get into all my exploration stock picks. And so today I'm going to do that. And I also have a few companies that had some news out this morning. It's Monday, August the 18th. And going forward, my game plan is that I'm going to be doing my weekend show because they're becoming like a weekend mining conference that I talk about the companies that I'm interested in. I'm going to split them into 2 days. I'm going to do one on Saturday and Sunday. At least that's the plan. So today I wanted to get into some companies in the news. But before I did that, and I'm going to try and do some stuff later around the talking about trends that I'm seeing. Before I do that, though, I started yesterday's show out, and I'm going to start this show out in a similar fashion. It's just a brief sort of intro, and what I talked about yesterday was last week was the anniversary of President Nixon ending the gold standard. It was supposed to only be a temporary thing, but that temporary suspension has lasted 50 years. And during that time, it really started the fiat currency experiment that has resulted in the debt and fiat currency system being broken by the central bankers and by the politicians. And ultimately, this has caused what I have been coining the last few years a death spiral of debt that has really been made worse by the cost of servicing that debt. And the politicians just are not doing anything to slow that down. The big spending bill that was passed just continues that process. And ultimately, I think the answer to that is the going back on a version of the gold standard. Now, another thing that I talked about was the sell in May and go away until Labor Day seasonal thought trend, if you will, which has proved to be a poor strategy in 2025 for the metal stocks. Plenty of them are performing very, very well, and a lot of financing is happening during the summer of 2025, which puts us in a really good position for the after Labor Day when a lot of news comes out. It tends to blend into another seasonal trend which is the last couple weeks of August often remind me of the last couple weeks of December when everybody's in sort of the holiday mode, and it creates, I think, a significant buying opportunity because these these metal stocks tend to be have light volume, generally speaking, compared to the big cap and Wall Street stocks. But during the last couple of weeks of August and the last couple of weeks of December, it really gets light volume, and that can create swings that give investors opportunities. So I think we're in that similar trend right now. Another thing that happens in the last couple of weeks of August and last couple of weeks of December is the news flow tends to slow down a little bit. This year, it's actually been really good in August because there is these a good amount of financings getting done and companies making news. So yeah, that sell in May and go away until Labor Day didn't work out too good for those that follow that trend when it comes to metal stocks. And I think what we're seeing happening in the last couple weeks of August is when I tend to bang the drum really hard because I see a lot of opportunities that really pick up and get exciting going into early September, shortly after Labor Day. And then, of course, that's when the September conferences in Colorado happened, the Beaver Creek Conference, and the one in the other one. There's another one in Colorado that happens that time of the year as well. And so a lot of news comes out. So I'm kind of getting ready for the news flow going into September. Okay. Before I get into few companies that had news, I wanted to talk about this chart in gold. Specifically, I wanted to point to, you can see my horizontal line there. And I would note that there was one, two, three, four attempts for gold to get over significantly over 2000 and into above 2100. It finally happened in early March and then was just record highs after record highs. So I'm now going to go to the daily chart and look at what's happening in a much tighter period of time. We've had one, two, three, four attempts at going over, let's say 3450 or 3500. And now gold is trading at the 50-day moving average. And I think and the 50-day moving average is trending up slightly. And I think we're headed towards a significant breakout. And let's look back at this time last year. We saw a similar kind of thing towards the end of August. It was kind of going sideways. Then it had another significant breakout. So seasonality is in our favor for the price of gold. And this trend is in our favor for the price of gold. And I think that generalists are starting to get more bullish on the metal stocks, the gold stocks. So we're coming into a really good period here. All right, so let's get into some news. Hercules Metals completes closing of share-based strategic option agreement with Barrick to consolidate 73 kilometers of claims around its Leviathan copper discovery in Idaho. They give you all the details here of the transaction that happened between Barrick and Hercules, but actually the news release that mentioned this deal, this one here. I wanted to point out something about that land that they got that really has me quite excited about that land package. So here was the original Hercules, and right about here, in here is where they made their initial discovery that got everybody excited a couple of years ago, as it looked like well, I think they have a new porphyry district in Idaho. It's probably the southern point of the trend that goes from British Columbia all the way down into the United States. But this green stuff is all the land that Barrick staked after Hercules made that initial discovery. Now, Barrick has a lot of projects that they're very busy on, and they knew that they're already a significant shareholder of Hercules. They bought in on the discovery hole, and so they decided to option this out, and that will give them a larger position in Hercules. And it makes a lot of sense because the Hercules team has been, they know this camp really, really well. They know this area. They know what to look for. So it was sort of a natural fit to hand over the exploration to them. A couple things that, gets me very excited about this area is there's a structure that comes up through here and then right to where they've made that big discovery. And, structures are cracks in the earth that allow the metals bearing fluids to make their way up. And in these porphyries are also can be structurally controlled. And so this structure that goes through the middle of this project and up into Hercules' main Leviathan discovery area is really important to me. And I like this acquisition for Hercules. I think it gives them the dominant land package in the area. Rio Tinto's in here as well. They've got some ground here that they staked. And Scout, a private company's in here. IDEX made some noise recently, and their project is right here. So, yeah, these Hercules now has a dominant land position in the camp due to this deal that they did with Barrick. And I like the structural story. There's another structure coming through this project that looks really interesting and could kind of wrap around. And these structural interpretations could have, a big influence on what Hercules does. They're currently drilling. They added more drill rigs to their property. They've got pending assay results, so stay tuned for more news out of Hercules on their project. Okay, the next one. Oops. I shrunk my screen there by accident. Sorry about that. There, I think I better stop share and then get back on to share to make sure I didn't screw something up there. There we go. I'll go back to Hercules. Okay, so now I'm going to move to the next company, which is First Majestic. First Majestic had news out today. Where is it? There it is. No, that's Norsemont. I'm going to talk about them in a moment. I think I closed down my First Majestic by accident, so let's get First Majestic up. They had a news release out today that I wanted to talk about because it was very high grade on one of their projects in Mexico, but it is also a cluster of epithermal veins that I wanted to talk about. And because it helps me explain um, what to look for when you're looking at one of these. Okay, so First Majestic, they announced positive drilling results from their ongoing drilling at their San Dimas silver gold mine in Durango province of Mexico. It's about an hour and a half from where I live in central Mexico. Keith Neumeyer, their CEO, stated, and I quote, the 2025 exploration results at San Dimas continue to reinforce its position as a high-quality asset within First Majestic's portfolio of operating mines. We are realizing strong results from numerous veins at San Dimas, near mine extensions at Elia, Sinaloa, Roberta, and Santa Teresa, and we are excited by the new high-grade silver and gold intercepts of the Coronado vein in the West Block. Extensions of historically mined areas remain untested by modern methods, and this speaks to the untapped potential of the district. These new results confirm our view that San Dimas has significant growth opportunities and remains a cornerstone asset of our long-term growth strategy. So then they give you the intersections here and look at some of these, like 3.57 meters of 16 grams of gold and 1,112 grams per ton of silver, 5.17 meters of 6.66 grams per ton of gold and 495 grams per ton of silver. And then there's a high grade at Elia, 1 meter of 23.70 grams per ton of silver and 578 grams per ton of, sorry, that was 23.7 grams per ton of gold and 578 grams per ton of silver. But this is the map that I really wanted to highlight because these epithermal vein systems um, often come in clusters. And as you can see, look at all of these veins on this project. And, that's why some of these clusters of epithermal veins in Mexico have been in production for over 500 years. And they start production and they just keep finding more and more and more. And that's what's happened at San Dimas, and they talk about those intersections that I mentioned the grades earlier, but I really wanted to show you this map because it shows you, all of a big cluster of epithermal veins that are spectacular. This is your classic epithermal vein cluster in Mexico. And you can see this tremendous grades that come out of these things. And yeah, so I wanted to show you that for First Majestic. And then in the context of the next company I'm going to talk about, which is, if my screen will cooperate with me here, which is Norsemont Mining. Norsemont announced the closing of a second tranche of a private placement led by Rob McEwen and other strategic investors. So this one was for about 1.4 million Canadian, and they just closed the first tranche for about 3 million, and they have one more tranche that's they expect to have closed off by the end of the month or end of this week actually. So that's going to load them up for cash. And then, well, Mark Levy, he's the CEO of Norsemont, he stated in a quote, "We're deeply honored and privileged to gain the support of legendary mining entrepreneur and investor Rob McEwen, and we're excited to welcome him as a strategic shareholder in Norsemont. His commitment is a strong endorsement of our vision and provides valuable resources to advance the Choquelimpe project through our upcoming drilling and technical programs, positioning us to continue delivering value for all stakeholders," end quote. Then Rob McEwen, who's the chief owner and chairman of McEwen Inc., stated, and I quote, "I'm pleased to become a strategic shareholder in Norsemont Mining as they advance the Choquelimpe project in Chile. The project's scale, geological potential, and existing infrastructure provide an excellent foundation for value creation. I look forward to supporting the team as they work to unlock Choquelimpe's full potential for the benefit of all shareholders," end quote. And so, in the context of those two quotes, I thought I would bring up their corporate presentation and talk a little bit about what I see. Here's the value proposition. It's about Brownfield's project. 140,000 meters have been drilled. They have indefinite presidential decrees for exploration and exploitation. They have a fast track to oxide leach opportunity and significant oxide upside. It's a stable jurisdiction with regional tax benefits. It's a high quality project, which was a past producer and significant infrastructure. There's an NI 43-101 initial resource estimate of 2.74 million gold equivalent ounces. They've got a maiden diamond drill program completed, drill permits in hand, and they've got the potential for copper porphyry and gold porphyry systems at shallow depths. Okay, so here's the mining infrastructure, some of it. Here is where they are in Peru, or sorry, in Chocolimpe is here, Bolivia's over here, Peru's over here. So it's in the northern part of Chile. This is the resource that has about 2.157 million ounces indicated gold equivalent and 568,000 inferred gold equivalent. This is some sonic drilling that they did on their stockpiles. These stockpiles were considered back when gold was a lot cheaper than it is now as non-economic, so they just stockpiled it. And Norsemont has gone in there and done sonic drilling to assess bringing those into production, and they're going to be doing preliminary economic assessments on it. And that looks like one of the near-term mining opportunities on the project. Here is the resource and the open part of it. A lot of drilling was done, and almost all of the resources within the first 100 meters of the project. Here's all the drilling that went into that resource. I would highlight, look at some of these high grade intersections: 32 meters of 35 grams, 18 meters of 16.5 grams, 22 meters of 10 grams, a meter of 100 grams. And I'm going to point out that when they drilled this, they were drilling vertical holes into what is the zones that brought the gold are vertical as well. So it's suboptimal. And when you do that kind of drilling in that kind of a body, the due to geostatistics, the modeler of the resource has to put a pretty conservative cap on those high grade hits. And so as you do more drilling, and I'm going to talk about that in a second here. So as you can see that all of this drilling was pretty shallow, and that's what informs the resource. There's virtually no drilling in between these two pits. So that's one immediate area to look for more. And now also the depth potential is really important as well, because these epithermal veins, I was just talking about epithermal veins when I talked about First Majestic, they go down for hundreds of meters, and all the drilling has been focused near surface. The depth potential of those epithermal veins has not been touched, and that's wide open. Um, Here is another important thing. These structures here are really important because this, in fact, is probably a cluster of epithermal veins. And you can see that some of these have been highlighted, and some of these intersections where veins cross-cut are where they get these nice zones. And so, this whole area is wide open to do more drilling. This is a breccia that they only drilled one hole down the side of it, and another hole got the top of it. And look at some of these grades: 31 meters of 3.63 grams per ton of gold right at the surface. And included in that is 9 meters of 6 grams. Look at this 93-meter intersection of 1.838 grams per ton of silver. And this is the what I think is an important breccia unit that needs a lot more drilling, especially down deep here, and especially with some angled holes to cut across it as well. Here is some of this highlights all the high grade holes. And again, I would point out that when they do resource estimates, the modeler, due to geostatistics, has to be pretty conservative with the capping of those high grades. So it actually understates, it's not meant to understate the overall resource. What it means is you got to do more angled holes into that to tie it all together so that they can then get a better representation of the distribution of the high grade, so then they can give you more higher cap on the grades. Now, I like this map for a specific reason, because here you can see one of their high grade holes. And you'll notice that you got to go several meters over before you hit another high grade hole. And when a modeler does that, they can only basically give you credit for one block on either side of that. By going in there with an angled hole, you could probably cut across like 6 or 7 of these vertical holes, and that gives you a much more broader area where you can fill that possibly entire area in with blocks in a resource model. And secondly, the resource modeler can give you a different capping to encapsulate more of the high grade because you need that more density cutting across the vertical bodies. Okay. Here it gives you some of the, this is chargeability. So as you can see, there's lots of chargeability anomalies still to test. Here's the porphyry style alteration that they've hit. So it looks like they've got the entire system, the epithermal veins that come off of a porphyry, the breccia that comes off of a porphyry, and the porphyry itself. So it needs a lot more drilling. And they note that copper was indicated at or intersected at depth in this hole. So, starting to show you where to go to find the porphyry that caused all the breccia and the veining. Now, some people have talked about this company having issues regarding permitting. And I'll point to this map because, yes, part of the claims are in what's a national park. That doesn't mean that you cannot get permits to drill there because they've got these presidential decrees that if there was historic work there, that they come under these grandfathered in. They don't really need to worry about getting into that national park for a very long time because down here in green and yellow, they've got presidential decrees that are indefinite mining permits and exploration permits. And I would note that you can see behind here this rusty colored rock. This is all alteration that some of it does go up into the top northern part of their claims, but they got a massive amount of area here that's all permitted, and they can then. I don't think they'll have any problems getting permits because there was his past drilling permits for this area where there has been drilling in the past. And so all of these green, yellow, and blue have these presidential decrees and are grandfathered into the old mining code. So that should rest everybody's concerns about getting permits. And then when you consider that this was already permitted for mining, here's all the infrastructure. So, these are brownfields things. They're all grandfathered in. They're all protected by past mining codes. So just wanted to show you that. Now, some people have commented that on this project, about 20% is in the oxides in the known resource, and another 80% is in the sulfides. Now, not all sulfides are created equal. Sometimes the gold in a sulfides can be encased inside of inside the sulfides. And then you have to use temperature and heat to extract that gold from that kind of a sulfide deposit. Now, in this case, and they have it on their, you just read their National Instrument 43101 technical report, and there's a specific area in that. I think it's about page 20 or 21 of that technical report, and it talks about how the gold is actually attached to the sulfides. At least 60 or 70% of it is attached to. And so, although technically you have to call that sulfides, it crushing that and using flotation and gravity and then maybe some leaching, you can get most of that gold out from the sulfide. It's a sulfide mineral it's attached to. So, one of the work programs that they're planning on doing is metallurgical work to further assess what is already discussed in their NI 43101 report. So I just wanted to touch on that because some of the people that are negative on the Norsemont story, I don't think they've quite done their homework as much as they should. And again, there's tax benefits from operating in their area. Look at this beautiful alteration. And I would note that take a look at this alteration inside one of the pits, and I'll go back up and I'll show you this map because you can see that same alteration coming out, sticking out of the surface. All of this is perspective. And this is where the past mining was done. And this is, indicative of a very large system. If you go from here where the alteration starts up to here, you're looking at like 10 kilometers of alteration, probably another 4 kilometers from side to side. And so wide open for exploration. And I just wanted to go over some of that because it helps talk about what was discussed in the quotes by Mark Levy and Rob McEwen in the news release announcing that they had closed the financing. Should I do some charts before? Let me get some charts up here. So Hercules. Let's talk about Hercules quickly. There's their chart, kind of been going sideways, recently firming up. They've been firming up as they've been talking about their their drilling, and then the announcement that they did that deal with Barrick has added some to add that to a big lamb position. And so, yeah, pretty good looking chart. Looks like it could have a breakout in the not too distant future. And I like looking at charts when they are awaiting assay results for some indications of optimism in the market by about the work that they're doing. Okay, let's look at First Majestic. AG is their symbol. Here they are. First Majestic. Um, Had a golden cross here. Are trading up nicely. And yeah, they had good news out today. So, they're benefiting from silver gaining strength. And they had some news out here about drilling results. So they are a miner, a silver miner, somewhat of a higher grade silver mine or a higher cost silver miner. So this pricing of silver is helping out their bottom line significantly. And for those that are looking for exposure to a silver miner, this one might be one for you to take a look at. All right, Norsemont. Let's pick up Norsemont. NOM, where I'm a shareholder. Happy shareholder. And you see, they went through a golden cross here. Now the stock had a big run from around 20 cents to as high as 80 cents, almost 80 cents. Had a little, tiny little bit of profit taking, and they're closing off this financing. So sometimes that can keep a bit of a cap. But look at it, it's trading significantly above the 50-day moving average. And shortly after the news goes out about the third tranche of financing being closed, and I think they've got some more strategic investors coming into the third tranche, that will load them up with cash, and then they can start talking about news releases on what their plans are. And so companies should have a lot of news flow over the next little while. All right, now let's go into my explorers that I didn't have a chance to talk about on my weekend show, and I'm going to talk about them today. And I don't, in the past couple of weekends, I kind of had to quickly go over uh, the um, the explorers. So today I cannot have to be so quick. Canadian Gold Corp is Canadian Gold Corp. There it is. This is a pick that has gone through a golden cross here, has been sort of trading sideways until they firmed up recently. And their recent news is that they're going to be taken over by McEwen Inc. And I'm really happy about McEwen Inc. taking them over because I think that Canadian Gold Corp has a very exciting orogenic gold discovery, and that can be brought into near-term production, but they don't really have the team that have that kind of experience to build a mine. McEwen Inc. does. And so McEwen Inc. can take it over the finish line. And yeah, it's a really high grade system and it's an orogenic gold system. It has excellent continuity from the top of the system down to about 100 meter or down to about 1,000 meters. And I think this is going to be their Tartan mine is going to be a great mine in Manitoba. And I'm happy that McEwen Inc. is going to be the one that is going to mine it. So that's the Canadian Gold Corp story. Next one is Dryden Gold. Dryden Gold is in Dryden, Ontario. They also went through a Golden Cross. Had a pretty good run because they had news on very good high grade drill results. Then it kind of softened up because they announced the private placement, and that can tend to keep a cap on the stock. I think it's getting oversold here at the 20 cent range, which is around the price that the private placement's been done on. They announced that they've closed that off. And so next up, I'm looking for assay results from the drilling that they've been doing. And I like the project in Dryden, Ontario. It has a lot of well, it has all the same geological characteristics of Red Lake, but for a long time it was underexplored because it was a patchwork of projects owned by a whole bunch of individuals and companies. And then Dryden Gold went in there and basically consolidated the entire camp. And they've been doing some drilling and they're getting a good understanding of the controls of the high grade gold on this system. Orogenic gold systems, you need certain characteristics. One is you need these Archean uh, rock packages, very old rocks, and then you need structures or cracks in the earth, faults and shear zones that crack the rock up, and this allows the fluids that carry the gold to make their way up closer to surface. And they're really getting a handle on the structural complexity and which structures are controlling the high grade mineralization. Um, and I think they're going to start rolling up their sleeves and really getting after that high grade gold potential at depth. And so that's the Dryden Gold story. Next up is Golden Cross. They are a fairly new pick for me. AU, sorry, sorry. Golden Cross. They're they are in, it is AUX. They're a new company that just started trading in the last few months, and their project is in Australia. And it's not very far from one of the great orogenic gold systems ever, which is the Fosterville Mine in Australia. They're about 40 kilometers from it. But again, you know, in orogenic gold systems, you have to have the very old rocks You have to have the structures, the cracks in the earth that bring the gold to the surface. They know that there is orogenic gold at the surface because there's been a lot of historical mining on their project. And they're well financed. They're doing a bunch of drilling. I think the total is going to be about 14,000 meters of drilling. And I'm a big fan of this project. I think that they've got something very exciting here. They've got assay results pending from some of their initial drilling. And I'm working on getting an interview with their management. I really like this story a lot. And that's the Golden Cross. Their stock symbol is AUX on the Venture Exchange. And yeah, it's got all the hallmarks of an orogenic gold system. It's near one of the great orogenic gold mines of the world, which is Fosterville. And they've got all the right, they check all the boxes you want to make a discovery. And the fact that there was all this historical mining done by these guys back when they were using picks and shovels and working really hard, they've kind of done all the geochem work for them, the surface sampling for them. And I think that all puts them in a really good position to make an important discovery. All right, that's the Golden Cross story. Now, Hercules Metals, I already talked about them. They're on my list of explorers, so I'm not going to talk about them again. Inventus Mining has a really interesting story that I don't think um, is being recognized because they're looking for a Inventus Mining. Well, they have a conglomerate gold project in Ontario. One of the greatest mines ever was the Witwatersrand mine in Africa, South Africa, that is a conglomerate gold mine. They tend to be like you can think of a lake bottom that has like maybe a couple meters of rock that are make up these conglomerate deposits, and they can start right at surface and then go very deep and very long for thousands of meters. And that's what they have, and they haven't got as much recognition for the quality of this project. And they did a lot of drilling recently to pinpoint where they wanted to do bulk samples on the project. And bulk sampling is a good way to assess these projects because they come right to surface. You can take big volumes of rock, and then they're sending it over to McEwen Inc.'s mill to be processed. And they've got their first batch, looked really good. And they're doing a bunch more of this bulk sampling. And as you can see, it recently hit the 50-day moving average and now has firmed up of late. The catalysts for them are more results from their bulk sampling. I really like this project a lot. I think it could be a near-term producer, and you know, you never know how big they got indications that that conglomerate unit of rock could go for very large distances. And they're just trying to really assess the grade and distribution of the gold nuggets inside of that conglomerate. Now, it's not one of these really coarse gold, and that's a good thing. It's got fine gold that's sort of distributed uh, it, throughout the conglomerate unit, and that's what you want in these conglomerate systems. And that's what Inventus has, and I think they've got a really good chance of having a future conglomerate gold mine in Ontario, Canada. And that makes it really special. And I think that they're underappreciated for what they have. All right, the next company is a Silver Explorer. Kootenay Silver. They're in Mexico. They had a Golden Cross back here in July. I started covering the company when they were about, I think about 60 cents or so. And maybe it was back here, somewhere in here. And they've been doing some drilling, getting really great results. They've already done a resource estimate of, and it has 50 million ounces of silver in it, and it's pure silver project. No, and the rule of thumb that I've talked about on past shows with companies that have resource is on a silver system is that they got to get up to about that 100 million ounce category because that is a rule of thumb. If you got something that's like that, it has about 10 years of production mine life and at producing about 10 million ounces a year of silver. This would be a very low cost, high grade system, and you can make a lot of money off of those systems. I think they're going to get to that critical mass based on the homework that I've done. They've got a whole cluster of epithermal veins that they've only been focusing on a few of them. And the few that they have been focusing on are getting bigger with their drilling. It's a really good story that I think is underappreciated for what they have. And I really like that they're doing a lot of drilling right now, and they'll have a lot more to talk about and lots of assays pending. Then they'll keep drilling right through the end of the year and into next year. And so do your home. If you're looking for a high grade silver exploration company, Kootenay Silver is a good one for you to take a look at. All right, Norsemont's already on my list, and I already talked about them, so go to earlier in the show. Uh, Power Metallic Mines. I actually talked about them yesterday on my show, so I'm not going to talk about them again. I'm going to instead advise you to go on my YouTube channel and look for yesterday's. Look in the description if you want to hear my latest opinion on Power Metallic Mines, and you can find that in that show. Okay. Quimbaya Gold, let me pull up their stock chart. They're right next door to Eris Mining. And I just added Eris Mining to my picks on my show yesterday. So I advise you to take a look at that. The reason I like Eris is because they've got the Segovia mine, and Quimbaya has the project right beside right beside Eris. And the veins that make up the Segovia mine, that cluster of veins, goes right through Kimbaya's property. And Kimbaya is drilling as we speak right now. I'll be watching really closely for those drill results because if they get any kind of discovery that those high grade gold veins and silver veins go from Segovia right through their property and they can prove that with a drill hole, they've already proved it with silver surface sampling and that there has been a lot of historical artisanal mining on the property. But now, if they can put it in a drill hole, then it's game on. And so they did a financing, and that loaded them up with cash. Plus, they've got this interesting deal where their driller, who's been drilling in Colombia for the last 40 years, is actually taking stock in the company instead of cash for doing the drilling. So they're in the midst, they've started that up just recently, like in the last 10 days or so. And the stock has been firming up nicely. It's trading and well above its 50-day moving average. And I hope that any day now they could come out with it wouldn't be the assay results just yet, but they might be able to come up with some sort of a news release about how their drilling is progressing. And and so stay tuned for that. Kimbaya has a very low valuation, And because they're beside such an important mine and the same geology goes right through their project, if they get some good hits with their drilling, as I said earlier, it's game on and it could get very exciting very quickly. So you want to do your homework on Quimbaya Gold. Their stock symbol is QIM and they trade on the Canadian Venture Exchange. Okay, Ramp Metals. Let me get Ramp up. Ramp Metals, last year they made a lot of noise because they drilled a 75 gram hit of gold over a 7 meter intersection. And the stock just, they've only been trading since like March of last year. And you can see they were a flatliner at about 16 cents, and then boom, they announced this big hit and it blasted off. And even during the winter months when they were waiting to get their permits, it continued to firm up, and then they started drilling and it continued to firm up. But then they had their results out from their initial drilling to follow up that discovery. They didn't really get anything too exciting, which can happen in exploration, folks. If it was as easy as drilling a handful of holes and you got a mine, that everybody would have a mine. But when there was a lot of optimism built in, and then they didn't deliver, so they got hammered all the way down to like 30 some cents. But I, in no way, shape, or form, do I think that they killed that project. They just need to understand the geology and the structural controls that brought that system, because you don't get a 7 meter intersection of 75 grams in something that is just like a magical hit where you poked your first hole down and you found it and then it disappears. It's there somewhere. It's going to take more drilling, but I think that it got overly optimistic and now overly negative. Now, in addition, when they announced the assay results from that follow-up drilling, they also announced very good results from a VMS discovery, a volcanogenic massive sulfide. Think of a volcano that brings base metals and precious metals up to the surface. And they got really good numbers for their sort of discovery holes on that. But because it came out when they also announced the disappointing numbers on the gold, it nobody cared about the VMS. But I care because I think they got the makings of a VMS discovery, and then they got to go and do more drilling on their gold discovery as well. So that's the ramp story. Okay, Argenta. Argenta, talked about them yesterday as well. So I'm going to advise you to go to my show from yesterday and look in the description of that video, and you'll see where I talked about Argenta. I'm a big fan of what Argenta is doing. They've got an exciting project in Argentina for high grade silver. And look at that. That's a beautiful cup and handle chart. I think this was the handle right in here. And now they've broken out from that. What caused that breakout was really great assay results, super high grade stuff in this system. It's got a lot of room to grow a lot bigger. And yeah, check out that from yesterday. Now, Almadex is run by the Polkin. I always say their names wrong, and I shouldn't because they're a very talented Polkin. I think I always butcher that name, but Polquin. I think that's the proper way of saying it. But they've had a lot of success in the past finding mines, selling them, and they're viewed as a prospect generator, but actually most prospect generators they just do a little bit of surface sampling and then they farm it out to another company, and they keep a smaller interest in it and let the other company spend their money to make a discovery and hopefully advance it towards being a mine. They've done that before, but where they're different is the company actually owns six of their own drill rigs, and they actually, when they find a prospect, they go in and drill it and see if they've got something. Right now, they're drilling a porphyry target in Nevada. And last year, I think they found the edges of it. And this year, they're vectoring into the guts of it. And if they've got the guts of it and it looks promising, this is the kind of company, because of the reputation of the father and son team that run the company. If they get something good in that drilling, this could blast off. The company is loaded up with cash. They've all got their own drill rigs, and if they make a porphyry discovery in Nevada, kitty bar the door. And that's why I follow them. And you should as well, and do your homework on Almadex Minerals. All right. Next up is Luca Mining. I like these junior gold miners. I don't know why I have them in as an explorer. I need to put them in as a junior gold mine, a junior miner. Sorry, but that's where I got them because they were a new pick recently, and sometimes I put the new picks in the explorers section. But they're a junior gold miner that has both precious and base metal mines, and they've got the pipeline to increase their production. And they brought in new management about a year ago. And when that new management came in, the company owed something like $28 million, or I think it might have been as much as $35 million. And because they've optimized their mines and are making very good money on those mines, they brought that debt down to like $7 million in around a year. So that just goes to show you that they've got good mines that are making them lots of money as a junior miner, and then they've got a pipeline to keep increasing their production, bringing down their costs, and these are the combination that I look for in a junior gold miner. Well, any miner, I like to see them replacing what they mine and being able to increase their production and bring down their costs. So this is a really interesting junior mining company that around a year ago went through a management change. They're optimizing their mines, they're doing more drilling, they're making lots of money, they're paying down their debt. I think within 6 months or so, they'll be completely debt free. And then that starts to build up their cash position. So Luca Mining is one for you to take a look at. All right, back to explorers. And I've got Northisle, which is also a new pick in about the last month or two I picked them. And you can see that they've gone through a golden cross here, have ran up quite nicely. They're currently trading at their 50-day moving average. They've got a resource. They've got the ability to grow that resource. They're focusing in on an area that they can bring into production first, and then use that to fund their exploration and developing other deposits on their project. And I really like that business plan. But why I picked them is somebody asked me just today, actually, when I look at Northisle, what do I think that they could be taken over for? And I told them that I don't really look at Northisle Copper and Gold. I didn't pick them because I thought they would be taken over. I picked them because I look at the value of what they have in the ground and their current valuation. And I see a company that is very undervalued relative to what they already know that they have and the economic evaluations that they've done on the project. And I really think that this is a company that is undervalued, and they, for what they know they already have in the ground and the ability to grow that, are catalysts with their drilling. And so that's the main reasons that I like Northisle. But another reason is that I'm a big proponent of juniors, focusing on using digital marketing tools such as YouTube for interviews and this sort of stuff to get the story out there, because there is a big audience of investors that are out there on places like X, formerly Twitter, YouTube, and they're interested in investing in mining stocks. But if you don't produce content, they're not going to know about you. And so this company does a really good job of using those digital marketing tools to get their story out there. And Sam Lee, the guy that runs the company, he's a really sharp guy. And he does a great job of telling the story from what they have, their business plan, the great team that they have on board, that they recently did a 35 million or so private placement. And Wheaton Precious Metals actually took a significant, I think about a $5 million investment part of that financing. And that what Wheaton Precious Metals is a what's called a streaming company. So usually when they invest in a project, they are investing in the project itself, and they get a streaming deal. So say you got a copper mine that has a little bit of gold or silver in it, they'll help fund the mine, and then they get to buy that gold and silver byproduct at a discounted price for providing capital to build the mine. In this case, they just came in as an investor, not as a streaming deal. So I find that really interesting. And in fact, I'm trying to get them on an interview. We've kind of been doing some email back and forth. And I think in the not too distant future, I'll be able to get Sam Lee on for an interview. And so stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, do your homework on NCX is their symbol. Northisle Copper and Gold is the name of the company. Rackla Metals. Oh, Rackla Metals is looking for a snowline gold lookalike, if you will. Why is this not coming up? Hopefully, I'm not having internet problems. Let's see here. Please tell me good. Okay, sorry about that. Let me get rid of some of this stuff because I'm a pretty basic guy when it comes to stock charts, and a lot of this is just noise to me. And I like to just look at stock performance, 50-day and 200-day moving averages, and volume. Those are my main indicators. So as you can see, the company went through a golden cross here. Stock has been trading with a lot of optimism because it looks like they could have something like what Snowline Gold has found in the Yukon, and it's given them a couple $1 billion value, or $1.5 billion valuation, because it's just a tremendous discovery. And these guys are looking for something on the Northwest Territories board side of the border between the Yukon and the Northwest Territories. And it looks like they have something that looks similar to what the discovery that Snowline has made. They're called reduced intrusion related gold systems. Basically, you get these very thin veins that come up, and they carry high grades in these thin veins. And when you have a high density of these veins in your drill holes, that's what the characteristics of. And with Snowline, it had a lot of visible gold in all those little veinlets. And sometimes they'd have 10 veinlets per meter of drilling. And so you could open pit mine these and they can be very exciting projects. One of the famous ones in this district is the Fort Knox deposit. And so now to the east of that is Snowline has found their valley discovery of a similar reduced intrusion related gold system. And now Rackla to the east of them is looking for another. And so far, a couple of their holes have got the density of veining that you want to see in these reduced intrusion related gold systems, but it hasn't had any visible gold in the core yet. Now, some are saying that there are other minerals that could be masking or hiding the visible gold. Assay results will tell us that. If those assay results come back and they do have the gold, like Snowline has found, it could get very interesting very quickly for them. And so do your homework on Rackla. You got to sort of understand that this could be a blow it out of the park home run. It could be a technical success or it could be a failure. So it's a roll of the dice, but if they've got something, it could turn out to be a very lucrative play. So that's why I'm following Rackla. Keep your risk profile into context and understand all that. But it's a very interesting project for me to be following. All right, the final explorer that I'm going to talk about today is Wolfden. And Wolfden is, where are they? Where is my Wolfden? Hold on a second here. Why is Wolfden not coming up? Okay, Wolfden. Sometimes stock charts gives me a hassle. And sometimes it doesn't even include all of the companies that trade in Canada. And I think that's the problem with Wolfden on my stock charts here. So I can't bring up the stock chart, so I'll bring back gold. So what Wolfden is doing is Wolfden Resources is in Nevada. And they're in the Walker Lane Trend, which is in Western Nevada. They've got a really interesting project that has a cluster of epithermal veins on it. There's been some historical work that suggests these could be high-grade gold epithermal veins. Usually epithermal veins have high-grade silver. Sometimes they have a combination of silver and gold, and sometimes they're gold rich. Sleeper in Nevada is an example. Hishikari in Japan is an example. And that's what their Wolfden Resources is looking for in Nevada. And so they recently did financing, so they're cashed up to get drilling. Keep an eye on them for the drilling and the results from that drilling. But I really like this project. There's a couple of mines in really close proximity to their Nevada project. And I've done my homework on the work that's been done on there in the past and the minimal drilling. And I think that this could be a breakout for that project with the work that they have planned. And so that's the Wolfden story. Okay, so I've run a little over an hour on this show, and I quickly wanted to go over some trends that I'm seeing in the metals, um, and some other things that I think are going to be bullish for the metals. Before I do that, let me go into some of these topics. The US dollar. I think that the US dollar is in a bear market that actually started after the 2022 highs that it reached. And right now I'm seeing that the so far in 2025, it's had the worst start to a year um, in many, many years, decades actually. And so I think that the US dollar is going to be going down, which is very good for metals prices. And it does make exports cheaper for foreigners that want to buy products, but it also makes imports more expensive for people bringing in products to the United States. So, because you're paying with lower value dollars, the higher the dollars, the cheaper it would be. The lower the dollars, the more expensive those imports are going to be. Now, adding to that, you've also got tariffs, which are a tax on those imports. And so the consumers are kind of getting hit with a couple of whammies there for inflation. Inflation is starting to pick up. It's been sort of a delayed reaction to these tariffs because there was a lot of front running that happened. So companies bought a lot before the tariffs and built up their inventories. And so as they're selling those inventories, they don't have to include the tariffs yet. But when they got to restock those inventories, then there's a bit of a delayed reaction to the tariffs. Ultimately, the idea that Besant and others in the administration are trying to sell that tariffs are not going to be inflationary is just ridiculous. Somebody has to pay those tariffs. The tariffs get paid when the product lands in America. So companies are not going to eat those costs. They're not going to lose money to make Trump and Besant and others happy. They're in survival for their own companies. They got to pass those increases, those tariffs on to the consumer. And the consumer is already stretched. So I think there's a second wave of inflation that's coming that will be very bullish for gold and silver that are hedges against inflation. And the other thing that's happening is while those tariffs are working their way into the through the supply chain and out to consumers, there was when those companies front ran the tariffs, they also had to use a lot of workers to stock up and front run those tariffs. Well, now that they're not doing that, the jobs market is stalling in a big way. June and July, or May and June had dramatic revisions to the employment numbers, and July came in very, very weak. So I think you're seeing that double effect of the tariffs, which is causing more inflation and causing the jobs market to slow down. And so this is stagflation, folks. And now the Federal Reserve has a really challenging decision to make. Do you throw inflation under the bus or do you throw jobs in the economy under the bus? And they're coming to a point where they got to make a decision. Now, this week is a meeting at the Jackson Hole, Wyoming meeting, and everybody's on their edges of their seat waiting to hear if, what Powell, Fed Chairman Powell, and other members are going to say about inflation and the jobs market and the stalling jobs market, and inflation is starting to rear its ugly head. A second wave of inflation is coming. So, you know, what are they going to do? That's the problem with stagflation. They really have no tools. If they cut interest rates dramatically, inflation takes off. Yes, it does help the economy and the jobs market, but inflation takes off and so does debt. And if you keep fighting against inflation, then you're throwing the jobs and the economy under the bus, and that goes into a recession. So they got a really, it's a juggling act that, that's why stagflation is so good for the price of gold and silver, because investors, it reinforces why they need to protect themselves against inflation and the calamity that these numbskulls in Washington, with their spending on this big spending bill and the huge death spiral of debt that's only getting worse and worse, and the way that the Federal Reserve tries to manage the business cycle, and they keep screwing that up. And that's why you want to get into gold and silver, especially the stocks, because they're very undervalued. All right, that's enough of that. I had my rant about stagflation's coming. You should pay attention to it. Not enough are. But there you go. I try my best. On the metals, uh, M&A is picking up because majors are cashed up, loaded with cash. There's not a lot of opportunities them to take over other majors or mid tiers. Next, they have to look down the food chain. And I think the way that they will do that is by being investors, not takeovers of developers and with high quality projects and explorers with important discoveries. What I think they'll do is strategic investments into them instead. And so the pipeline of the food chain of the gold stocks and the silver stocks and the copper stocks is, there's not a lot of, companies for generalist investors to look at. And I think that that makes for a very exciting situation. The bottom line is that the supply chain of gold, silver, copper are broken. There hasn't been enough new discovery, important discoveries. There isn't enough high quality projects in the pipeline that are being developed into new mines. There's not a lot of mid tiers out there. There's not a lot of majors out there. They kind of got all consolidated during the 2001 to 2011 gold bull market. So, with the price of gold and silver, copper, platinum, palladium, I think are going to go up, up, and up. The generalist investors are going to start to look at these stocks. And when they do, they're going to find a very small menu. Um, of course, they'll start with the big names, like the ones that I follow, like Agnico Eagle is my top gold miner, and Newmont and Pan American Silver for a silver major, but they just don't have a big menu to look through. And I think that that helps all the stocks along the food chain, from the majors to the mid tiers to the junior miners to the developers to the explorers with important discoveries. This is good for all of them. Uh, and so, that combination of the generalists starting to get involved in the mining stocks is very bullish for the mining stocks. And I think it's ultimately going to take things a lot higher. Now, before I close off, I want to also mention that I have started about a month and a half ago something that I'm really excited about, which is a WhatsApp group for Rocks and Stocks News. And we are getting a really great audience in there. And the way I think of it, it's kind of like a mining conference floor that's online, happening 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's lots of great commentary on there. My goal is to make that the premier destination online for investors to come in and join a vibrant discussion of all things rocks and stocks. I have recently made it a private group. So the way to get in there is, if you know a member, they can invite you in, or you can just email me at rocksandstocksnews@gmail.com. That's rocks and stocks news. And is the word and, not the abbreviation for it, at gmail.com. And I'll get you a link so you can join that group. And yeah, that's all I wanted to talk about today. So, as always, do your homework, speak with your financial advisors before making any investment decisions. Consider me biased on every company I talk about, on every trend I talk about, on everything I talk about on my shows. You got to do your own homework. You got to talk to your financial advisors, talk about your risk profile. I'm a big believer in investors understanding the companies they own stocks in, so do that homework. I'm just an idea generator. I don't make investment buy and sell recommendations. That's up to you, your homework, and your financial advisors to make those decisions. I'm merely an idea generator. I use my 32 years of experience in the mining business to give you my opinion on what I see, what's important to me, but you need to do your own homework to make your investment decisions. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.